It's been about 5 months since the Elden Ring DLC, and I miss it. I miss all the hype, the anticipation going into it, and then just playing it for the first time. And when I beat it, the first thing I did is just go on Twitter, and I see all these people just talking about Mesmer, and they talk about how crazy his Phase 2 is, when the music just builds up to a crescendo and just pops off, and he's just literally stood in the middle of the arena and he screams and like 10 snakes just come flying out. It's just crazy, I love it. And then on the other side of the coin, you got people talking about Commander Gaius, and people hated the charge attack. They absolutely hated it, and they swore it was the worst boss they'd ever seen from FromSoft, and indeed in any game really. And I just love all that, like, I love all the passion that people show towards the FromSoft games, and you don't really get that anywhere else. And it's just a great experience to be a part of. And because of that experience, it's actually motivated me to talk about what I want FromSoft's next project to be. And it's already heavily implied by Miyazaki that he doesn't really want to do an Elden Ring or a Dark Souls type successor next, so this opens the door for something different. And if you follow my channel, it's no secret that I'm a big lover of Sekiro. Much of the channel's content is based on Sekiro, and so it's no secret that I'd love a Sekiro Successor to be next. So let's talk about it. I remember when Sekiro first came out, and I actually didn't play it on release. I watched other people stream it, and it was absolutely wild. I mean, I still remember I was watching this one guy. He was dying to Guardian Ape for about an hour. He just kept getting killed by the grab. It was so funny. But when he eventually killed it, I was just there like, GG's, it's done. But then it gets up. Like, what the hell? Like, what? This was probably my first time actually seeing a FromSoftware game streamed as well, and I was like, what the hell? Like, this thing actually got up. Like, how? And it was just absolutely crazy. And yeah, I'll never forget it the first time. And then some months later, I saw Onbal uploading all these videos, and I was just fully hooked by the combat. It reminded me of the Star Wars prequels growing up, just that quick lightsaber combat. The skill on show makes the battles more intense, it makes them feel like they have higher stakes. Also, I think Berserk comes to mind, where Guts talks about his sword and the sparks it gives off when the blades clash, and I really got that vibe from Sekiro, and it's a really big plus for me. I've always loved watching the game, and then a few years later I did eventually start playing myself, and I just got fully hooked on trying to learn the combat, and yeah, the rest is history.
Sekiro yo. Yarenu ka.
But just because I love the game, it doesn't mean I think it's perfect, and I think a successor could improve on multiple things the game does well, and also change a few things the game doesn't do so well. And with that in mind, allow me to turn your attention to an article that came out earlier this year. In June 2024, Miyazaki gave an interesting interview with Game Informer where he talks about the relationship between offense and defense in these games, saying it has become much more fluid and active. And with that in mind, he explains Sekiro is the game that embodies this mechanic the most, and he explains, personally, I think there's one more level we can crank it up to, and sharpen that and hone in on that mechanic even more, but I think Sekiro was a big turning point. Now in truth, Miyazaki doesn't really say too much because he doesn't want to spoil his next projects, but I'm still going to try and read between the lines and just give my take. In Sekiro, the relationship between attack and defense is summed up best by the Junichiro Ashina fight. This fight clearly demonstrates the idea of attacking Junichiro until he parries you, and then it's his turn to attack and your turn to defend. And when Junichiro is back in a neutral stance, it is almost always your turn to attack. It gives the fight a consistent flow, and I think if FromSoftware want to crank up this mechanic to another level, then I have a few ideas for the next level they could go to. Even though I personally yearn for Sekiro deflecting in the next game, I also acknowledge that the dodge could be better. And whilst the dodge is utilised well at times for repositioning, avoiding knockback moves, and of course for Mikuri countering, A big issue is the bosses don't really know how to react when you dodge. People can even break the enemy AI by dodging every move for certain boss fights. This is because the bosses aren't really designed to expect you to dodge their attacks, and so it leaves them confused when you do so. And quite frankly, it leaves them looking like this guy. One game I'd recommend to everyone watching is Sifu. Sifu is awesome, and also it combines the parrying and dodging so well, and it does it so much better than Sekiro. And it's basically a game where you could beat the entire game by dodging and then counterattacking if you really wanted to. But truth be told, it's not really a dodge, it's more like a weave, and basically you hold down L1 and you input any direction, and your character will do this Matrix style dodge, and it's so cool to watch. It makes you literally feel like you're Neo from the Matrix, and it interacts so well with the boss's movesets as well. I mean, I was playing through Master difficulty earlier this year, and Fajar just non-stop attacks if you just keep parrying, and so it's so satisfying and it's so seamless and it's so intuitive to just parry until the end of his combo and then weave at the end. Like, for example, you can punish his kick and then hit him with a combo of your own, and it's just so satisfying to like have that sort of gameplay loop. And even with the final boss, the game doesn't stop innovating, because with Yang, he'll behave differently depending on what you do. For example, if you weave too much throughout the fight, he'll take a mental note of this and he'll start standing off you, and he'll be all passive and he'll try to wart you onto something so he can destroy you. And I just think it's so cool that you have this different dynamic in this game, all because it utilises this dodge really well, and I would love to see something like that in Sekiro. Another thing I think they could do is they could change and refine the way that the enemies parry us. So I've already mentioned that we can attack an enemy until they parry us, but I think they can get more creative with this. Like, if we fight an enemy that's so much physically stronger than us, then when they parry us, I mean, they should knock us back a bit. I mean, really give weight to it, show that they're much stronger than us. Or alternatively, if we fight an enemy that's way more agile than us, then perhaps like they could just ride the weight of our sword and just like counterattack by evading and all that sort of stuff. And I think that would just give the fights even more charisma than they already have. And we see it a little bit in the owl fight in Sekiro, where like he knocks us back with the chasing slice, and also he can just Mikiri counter us, and he just shows that he's way stronger. And also I think you could just bring it up another level by, like, maybe if an enemy parries us to its right hand side, maybe it'll follow up with a thrust attack. Or maybe if an enemy parries us to its left hand side, maybe it'll follow up with a grab attack. And I do think that they would bring even more personality to this game by bringing in fresh ideas like this. And I really believe people would love that. Now, this next point isn't combat related, but one of the big things I think they can improve on is the sheer scale of the game. We saw how big Elden Ring was, and whilst I don't want a Sekiro Successor to be a massive open world game, I do think having more bosses and bigger areas will lead to a game and a world that feels more alive and adds tension and stakes to the game. Bigger doesn't always mean better, but I do feel like most sequels and successors do have that trait. Ideally, I would like the scale of Sekiro Successor to be twice the size, and on top of that, I would like said game to have a DLC of its own. People will counter-argue this and say the reason Sekiro is as good as it is because it is small in scale, allowing them to refine the combat more carefully, but I say differently. I think now they already have laid those foundations, they are now equipped with the tools to take it to the next level. Jedi Survivor did this recently and I loved it, and that game is also Sekiro-like in terms of combat. But even if you don't like that game, consider Red Dead Redemption, GTA 6, Mass Effect 2, and as far as movies go, The Empire Strikes Back, The Dark Knight, Spider-Man 2. Now, I'm not saying FromSoft should make a direct sequel, but these are examples of more ambitious, bigger, better successor projects. Before we wrap things up, I just want to say if anyone out there is pretty desperate for more of Sekiro's combat and they can't wait any longer, then definitely check out the Sekiro Resurrection mod. Playing through Res for me was kind of like playing vanilla Sekiro for the very first time again. I've played through it twice, and I can honestly say that everything felt fresh to me. Most of the areas have been changed, many of the bosses have been completely reworked, and in addition to that, there's been new mini-bosses added, and there's also been cool things been done with the combat. And as follow-up to my point on Sifu, I do believe the folks at Res are developing a new sidestep feature, so I am excited to see where they go with that. The main moderator, Ionian, definitely has a lot of interesting takes on where the combat of Sekiro could go, and he was definitely a big inspiration for this video. There is another mod out there called For the Sake of Ashina that's definitely on par with Resurrection in terms of quality, but it is just the boss fights that are overhauled right now, and there's only a few of them, and I'm not sure if Source is still developing the mod, but I still highly recommend it, it's still amazing. Anyways, these are just some musings from some random guy on YouTube. Ultimately, the only thing that's been said is that they want to do more Armored Core, and I'm down for more Armored Core because I absolutely loved Armored Core 6. It was way better than I expected it to be. Or maybe they'll just make new IP, but overall, whatever they do next, I'm really excited to see it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. I'd love to hear you guys elaborate on some of these points or give points of your own. These videos won't replace the usual videos, they'll only add to them. And I definitely want to make follow-up videos at some point in the future. Definitely where I talk more about Resurrection and just Sekiro modding in general. And there's also other points to the combat and the overall gameplay of Sekiro that I could just bring up. And there's just so much to talk about. I think it's exciting. But anyways, take care and I'll see you guys next time.
お返しいたす見事